In the Western Pacific, the South China Sea has become a global flashpoint. It's not just a regional squabble. Trillions in trade pass through these waters, linking Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Any disruption here ripples through the world economy. The conflict between China and the Philippines is a test of sovereignty, power, and the rules that govern international order. Incidents at sea, water cannons, near collisions, risk escalation, and could draw in major powers, including the United States, which is bound by treaty to defend the Philippines. Other regional players like Japan, Australia, and ASEAN members are deeply concerned about the erosion of the rules-based order. This dispute is a microcosm of a larger global power struggle. As tensions rise, daily reports of confrontations and diplomatic sparring fill the news. The issue has moved beyond territory. It's now a defining challenge for 21st century international relations. It tests the limits of international law, the strength of alliances, and the ability of global institutions to keep the peace. What happens here could shape the future of global politics. The world is watching because the stakes are nothing less than the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. Understanding this dispute is essential for anyone who wants to grasp the forces shaping our world. The South China Sea is where the interests of nations collide, and the outcome will affect us all. The China-Philippines dispute is rooted in clashing historical narratives. China claims its mariners first discovered and administered the South China Sea, citing ancient maps and dynastic records as proof. This forms the basis of its claim to indisputable sovereignty. The Philippines, meanwhile, grounds its claim in geography and modern law, arguing that features like the Spratlys and Scarborough Shoal are part of its continental shelf and within its proximity. Manila points to post-World War II administration and international law, especially UNCLOS, as the foundation of its rights. These opposing narratives create a deadlock. China sees history as paramount, while the Philippines insists on legal frameworks. The result is a clash between historical primacy and modern law. This disagreement isn't just about rocks and reefs. It's about which principles should govern the world's oceans. The impasse makes negotiation nearly impossible, fueling a dispute that's as much about legitimacy as territory. At its core, the conflict is a battle over the rules that define international order. China's claim centers on the 9-dash line, a sweeping U-shaped boundary that covers nearly 90% of the South China Sea. The line's meaning is deliberately vague. Does it claim islands, waters, resources, or all of the above? This ambiguity lets China justify patrols and assert control, often clashing with the exclusive economic zones, EEZs, of its neighbors. The 9-dash line turns international waters into a zone of Chinese concern, directly contradicting UNCLOS, which China has ratified. The world rejects the line as having no legal basis, but China's Coast Guard and Navy enforce it anyway. This puts China at odds with its treaty obligations and the global legal order. For the Philippines, it means constant risk for its fishermen and Coast Guard, even within its own EEZ. The 9-dash line is more than a map. It's a challenge to the post-war rules that govern the seas. The conflict between China's ambitions and international law is the heart of the region's instability. As long as the line stands, so does the risk of confrontation. The Philippines bases its claim on international law, especially UNCLOS. As an archipelagic state, it asserts rights over resources within its 200 nautical mile EEZ, including vital areas like Reed Bank and Mischief Reef. Manila's approach is legalistic and multilateral, seeking support through ASEAN and international arbitration. In 2013, the Philippines took China to court, challenging the 9-dash line under UNCLOS. The focus is pragmatic, securing fishing rights, energy resources, and the livelihoods of coastal communities. By framing the dispute as a legal issue, the Philippines rallies global support for a rules-based order. For Manila, international law is the only equalizer against a much larger neighbor. China dismisses this as an attempt to internationalize the issue. But for the Philippines, it's about survival and principle. The stand is not just for itself, but for the idea that all nations' rights must be respected under common rules. In 2012, Scarborough Shoal became the flashpoint that changed the game. When the Philippine Navy tried to apprehend Chinese fishing boats, Chinese maritime ships intervened, sparking a tense standoff. The US brokered a deal for mutual withdrawal, but only the Philippines complied. China stayed, seizing de facto control. This exposed the limits of Philippine power and the realities of maritime coercion. The loss of Scarborough Shoal was a blow to Filipino fishermen and national pride. The incident pushed Manila to seek legal recourse, filing its landmark arbitration case against China. For China, the standoff was a strategic win, setting a precedent for further assertive actions. It marked the shift from diplomatic disputes to direct control and militarization. The 2012 standoff was the moment the conflict became a struggle for territory and presence at sea. In July 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration delivered a sweeping victory to the Philippines. The tribunal ruled China's 9-dash line had no basis in international law and that UNCLOS superseded historical claims. It clarified that none of the Spratly features could generate an EEZ and that Mischief Reef belonged to the Philippine continental shelf. China was found to have violated Philippine rights by interfering with fishing and exploration and by building artificial islands. China rejected the ruling outright, calling it illegitimate and refusing to comply. Despite the legal win, the Philippines saw little change on the water. China's activities continued. The Duterte administration downplayed the victory for economic ties, but later leaders invoked the ruling as the core of foreign policy. The 2016 award became a key reference for the US, Japan, Australia, and others in pressing China to follow international law. The case exposed a weakness in the global legal system. No enforcement means legal victories can be ignored. The ruling gave the Philippines moral leverage, but not control. The dispute remains unresolved, with law and power still in tension. The 2016 decision is now a permanent factor in the region's geopolitics. The South China Sea dispute is as much about resources as territory. Beneath the sea lie oil and gas reserves vital to both countries' energy security, like Reed Bank, within the Philippine EEZ, but blocked by Chinese vessels. Fisheries are another flashpoint. Millions depend on these waters for their livelihoods. China's blockade of Scarborough Shoal has devastated Filipino fishing communities. The constant threat from Chinese Coast Guard ships keeps Filipino fishermen away from traditional grounds. The dispute also chills foreign investment in the Philippines, especially in energy. Manila must balance defending sovereignty with the economic risks of angering China. For Beijing, control of the sea lanes is essential for trade and energy imports. China's assertiveness is driven by a desire to secure its economic future, even at the expense of its neighbors. The fight for resources makes the dispute a matter of survival for both sides. The military stakes have risen sharply. China has built artificial islands in the Spratlys, turning reefs into military outposts with airfields and harbors. These bases let China project power across the South China Sea, shifting the regional balance. The Philippines has modernized its forces and deepened its alliance with the US, expanding joint exercises and base access. Japan and Australia have stepped up support, providing patrol vessels and training. ASEAN nations are caught between economic ties to China and security concerns. The region is now heavily militarized, with constant patrols and the risk of accidental clashes. Even a minor incident could escalate into a larger crisis. The web of alliances and rivalries makes the South China Sea a focal point of global competition. The military buildup ensures the dispute remains volatile and unpredictable. The South China Sea dispute remains unresolved, with no easy solution in sight. It's a clash of history, law, and economic interests, made more dangerous by military posturing. The 2012 standoff and 2016 legal victory changed the landscape, but China's actions continue unchecked. For the Philippines, the stakes are sovereignty and survival. For China, it's regional dominance and security. The world watches as the sea becomes a stage for great power rivalry. Legal victories matter, but without enforcement, power still rules the waves. The risk of miscalculation is ever present, and the path to peace is uncertain. The enduring question: can diplomacy and law prevail, or will the South China Sea remain a zone of perpetual tension?